You trying to get your bill in now?
All rise, come to order.
Please be seated. Okay, we are here on case number 19B03549-10, State of Georgia versus Robert J. McDonald. We're here for the purposes of a sentencing. Matter was previously set for sentencing on March the 13th. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court put in operation the pandemic plan that was authorized by the courts. And the courts were shut down, so this matter has been continued to this date. We're here for sentencing. Ms. Oldham for the state, Mr. Britt for the defense. You ready?
Yes, Judge.
You ready, Mr. Britt?
Yes, sir, Judge.
Before we start, Judge, just because of the way things are currently set up, did you want us, regardless of what we were going to say, to speak from the podium, or is it okay if we remain in our place?
As long as I can hear you okay and you can hear me,
Okay?
we'll try from the table there. If anyone is called as to give testimony in the matter, of course, we'll need them there,
All right.
okay?
Yes, sir.
Is that satisfactory?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may proceed, Ms.
Thank you,
Oldham.
Judge. Judge, before I start, the victim's mother, Tamara Crenshaw, is here. She would like to speak on behalf of her son Demetrius Hollins at the proper time.
Okay.
Okay? First thing I want to do, Judge, is I want to remind everybody why we're here. So at this time, I would like to present State's Exhibit 16. This was the video that was showed at trial and was entered as evidence.
Oh, shit.
And these are state's exhibits 18 through 21.
Any objection?
Insofar as State's Exhibit 18 through 21, Judge, we would object to those on this basis for sentencing because throughout the trial, this is how he appeared, but there's no evidence of where these injuries came from and whether or not they're attributable to any actions that my client did. There was no testimony by Mr. Hollins. There was no testimony by any medical. There was no testimony whatsoever as this was what happened, but as to when it did take place, as far as whether it happened from Mr. Von Giovanni's elbow strikes and struggling with him, or where it took place, there was no evidence. So we would object to the court considering those for sentencing purposes. And that-
Judge, these photos are in evidence. We just watched Mr. Holland's head bounce off the pavement. I expect that at least some of this, in part, is attributable to Mr. McDonald. And as I mentioned a moment ago, these pictures are in evidence.
Anything else, Mr. Britt?
I understand they're in evidence, Judge, but just because they're in evidence doesn't mean they can be considered in aggravation of sentence in this case if it's no been relevant. State had ample opportunity to prove that portion of the case, and they didn't even attempt to do anything.
Judge, he was convicted in this case, aggravated assault, violation of his oath of office, and battery, which includes in physical injury. This is physical injury. These photos were admitted at trial. I could understand if we had new photos, or we had something else. We don't have anything new, we have stuff that was admitted at trial. We could just ask that you let us present the photos and get on with our argument.
I'll allow him at this time.
This is State's Exhibit 18. This is State's Exhibit 19. This is State's Exhibit 20. And this is State's Exhibit 21.
Go ahead.
I will. Demetrius Hollins tells Sergeant Bon Giovanni, I will behave, I will cooperate, however you want to interpret that. He lays down on the ground, puts his hands behind his back, Bon Giovanni cuffs him and walks towards Hollins' feet. And we saw that in the video.
Is this closing, is this a sentencing argument, or what is this?
This is my review of the facts and why we should sentence the way we are, and I believe I have the opportunity to do so.
Testimony before we start doing argument.
I don't think we need testimony, this is a sentencing hearing. All this stuff was presented at trial.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. He walks towards Holland's feet, and we just saw that in the video. A few seconds later, this defendant, in the middle of the day, on a busy highway, a busy intersection, runs up to the scene with his gun drawn. He runs through a whole bunch of cars in order to get there with his gun drawn. This particular action is contrary to any training he had. He steps on Holland's head and then puts his knee on his neck and points the gun at his head. The big question the state has, Judge, is why? Mr. Hollins is already submitted, he's on the ground, he's not armed. This is totally against any training that Mr. McDonald had. Then, the worst part of this is that they tried to hide what happened. They didn't know that they had arrested the victim before when they were out on the scene. Like I said, this is the middle of the day, there were lots of people. They finally found out that people knew about it, or that people at the station knew about it, when people called to complain. They said, hey, I saw this, and this wasn't right. You know, not every person is bad, Judge, and Mr. McDonald was good when he was in class. He passed all of his use of force training classes, he did well in all his classes that I know, but he didn't learn one big thing. And the one big thing that he didn't learn is assess the situation constantly. That's the one thing that we heard from from Corradino and from other people who were talking about use of force. Even if he was concerned about Mr. Hollins being handcuffed, why was his gun drawn when he's up on the scene? He didn't just run up to the scene, he ran up to the scene with a gun drawn. Sergeant Pt.1 didn't have a gun drawn. Matter of fact, he's standing at Hollins' feet. He gets to the scene, sees Hollins is in handcuffs, and then he put his knee on his neck and a gun to his head. Big question here is why? Why did any of this have to happen? Why cover it up? Because they knew he was wrong. Mr. Hollins has suffered severe mental trauma. He's suffered facial lacerations, extreme amounts of bleeding. And Mr. Hollins' family will be happy to talk about that when they get up here. I mean, if this is what he does in the middle of the day, what would he have done if he thought nobody was watching? I mean, Judge, we live in a society where everybody is watching everything all the time. And we all have to watch what we do, whether it's here in court, out on the street, wherever we are. But we all have to watch. Maybe he never expected a video. Maybe he watched Rambo the night before. Maybe Hollins reminded him of someone. I don't know. It doesn't matter why he did it or whom he did it to. It could have been Jack the Ripper on the ground there. It doesn't matter who he did it to. It doesn't matter that he did it. He was unfit to be a law enforcement officer. He ruined the lives of many people, including his own, by his rash action and Rambo police tactics. Someone could have died out there with his gun out and his knee on Hollins' neck. The gun again pointed at his head. Law enforcement is held to a higher standard, and they're taught to control their emotions. They're taught to assess the situation. This defendant did none of those. His charge was to protect and serve the citizens of Gwinnett County. Again, running with his gun drawn in the middle of the day, stepping on Hollins' head, and then stepping on his neck and putting a gun to his head to a handcuffed kid who was unarmed is not doing any of those things and following his training. Judge, I'm gonna sit down and let either Ms. Crenshaw speak or Ms. Fritz speak. However, the state's recommendation at this time is 10 years with the first 3 to be spent in confinement. He's not to have any more law enforcement jobs. He is to surrender his post-certification. He is to pay a $34 per month probation supervision fee, a $1,500 fine, restitution in the amount of $1,335.08 for Demetrius Hollins' medical bills. And that's what we're asking at this time. And we believe that the actions of this person, Mr. McDonald, who's a sworn law enforcement officer, sworn to protect and serve the Gwinnett County citizens, that we believe that this is fair. We would ask that you impose it. Thank you.
Mr. Fred, you wish to say anything? You want her to just call her witnesses if she wishes to do
I'd like to do the procedures like we're supposed to do it. She calls a witness, then we all make arguments. Then since she made her argument, let her put her witness up, and I'll do mine, I'll make my argument.
Okay. That's
She
fine.
doesn't get to say anything yet.
I wasn't playing. Ms. Crenshaw? Judge, did you want her to take a witness stand?
If she's gonna give testimony.
She's gonna
Ms. Britt,
give
you're
her-
gonna wanna cross-examine the witness? Ms. Britt, you gonna wanna cross-examine the witness?
I may, Judge.
Okay, well, let them come up on the witness.
One at a time.
Demetrius.
Judge, before Mr. Crenshaw takes a stand and I swear her in, I just want to point out that along with Ms. Crenshaw, is Mr. Hollins, the victim in this matter. Mrs. Crenshaw's other daughter is Sherry Myrick's, mother and grandmother of Demetrius, Olivia Quigley, John Jones, his uncle, and Maddie Jones, his aunt, and they are all sitting on the back row there. Ms. Crenshaw, would you raise your right hand? You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes,
Okay, you can put your hand down now. Would you please state your name for the court reporter?
Tamara S. Crenshaw.
And Ms. Crenshaw, You are related to Demetrius Holmes?
I am.
Okay, and how are you related to him?
I'm his mother.
Okay, and you wish to make a statement regarding the impact this has made on you and your son and your family?
That's correct.
Okay, please go ahead.
If you're gonna believe, I would think that when you give victim impact, you either give it by letter that's submitted to the court ahead of time, which is often the way it's done. But if she takes a stand and testifies, it's question and answer. It's not just sit up there and read.
Judge, I've submitted Ms. Crenshaw's statement to Mr. Brick, he knows exactly what she's going to say. So if the court would like a copy of it, I'd be happy to go and make one. But this is her victim impact statement. This is her statement about how this case has affected her and her family. This isn't testimony per se. It's a victim impact statement, which is completely and totally different.
That's not correct, Judge. Victim impact is just like any other testimony. When you testify, questions and answers. It's not narrative form. They could have done it another way. They could have sent it to me, said, we're just gonna submit that, and I would have said, fine. But she's taking the stand to testify. She wants to do it here in person, so it has to be done like testimony, Judge.
Judge, I don't agree with that. We've done tons of victim impact statements in the past.
Well, tons. Y'all done a lot of stuff.
Mr. Brick is arguing with me about something.
I'm not arguing with you, I'm arguing. Y'all done
Oh,
it,
and
you
Judge-
take this because
Thank you.
we've done it, the district attorney, the same district attorney's office has done something, doesn't mean it's right.
Judge, Marcy's law says that she has the right to speak.
I don't dispute that, Judge, but it's the manner in which you do it.
She can speak.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Crenshaw, you may go ahead.
Okay. Your Honor, good afternoon. In the interest of this court today, I want to state briefly the effects that the heinous actions of former officer Robert McDonald has had on me and my family. And I am speaking on behalf of myself and my son Demetrius Hollins. And we are asking you to impose the maximum allowed sentence for former officer Robert McDonald in the involvement of a traffic stop that turned into a brutal assault on my son on April 12th, 2017. For over 25 years, I've had the privilege and honor of being Demetrius' mom. Before we've had senseless and brutally assault by Officer McDonald. I've had many jobs over the years, but the one that really counts is being a mother to my children. Although I have a daughter as well, which has blamed herself for calling her brother over to the house that day to give her some money when she asked. Both of whom I love with all my heart, there's a sense of heartache inside of me due to my son's experience that will haunt us every day for the rest of our lives. As a mother, this impact of this incident happening to my son, our worlds have forever been changed. Of course, my first thought was that there must have been some kind of mistake, and I couldn't believe it. But it was true. I have since pulled myself together and come with the realization that my son has been pulled over for a traffic stop, then assaulted, stomped in the head, and had a gun drawn to his temple by the then officer Robert McDonald. Demetrius' assault has left him vulnerable and scared and forever disheartened that he will never be able to put this experience behind him. He's had life truly turned upside down, being a young adult, attending college with a full-time job and having his own apartment, to now living at home again with his parents. Everything he was working so hard for came to a screeching halt. For months, if not years now, Demetrius would sleep with a nightlight on every night and often wake in the middle of the night or early mornings feeling dysphoria and burst into tears with visions of nightmares, headaches, body aches from the torment. My son had not ever suffered from any type of insomnia, headaches, seizures, emotional trauma, depression, PTSD, or just plain fear until that April day, which turned into an unforgettable day for the rest of his life. I also find it impossible to say that this episode has affected either part or not most of my life thus far. Demetrius has gone from "I love you, Mom," giving me big hugs and kisses, telling silly jokes, and having the infectious smile that would light up any room. He was kind, loving, happy, sincere, genuine, humble, affectionate, hardworking, sentimental, and most of all, a caring son. He has this rare instinctive gift of making everyone in his family and others feel special, loved, and appreciated. Now that has all turned away, and to always having a depressed mode, heightened anxiety, feeling disconnected, thoughts of suicide, and having unwanted memories of this assault. Demetrius has had to see a neurologist, a psychologist, a family therapist, and spiritual counseling. And this ordeal has cost me emotionally, mentally, physically, and financially. I had to take time off from work to take him to these specialists and have to seek professional help for myself to deal with my own low grade of depression, stress, anxiety, and a feeling of sense of failure to protect my son. There's a special bond between a mother and a son, and although this has affected Demetrius physically, it has mentally affected me as well. Our bond, God willing, that remains strong and will continue to encourage him every day to heal from this. For my children have always been the light of my life as a mother. Your Honor, myself and my family still struggle every day with the phobia of just police officers, and that it may be another member in our family that this happens to. Several years have passed now, and we are still trying to adjust from an unstuck state to heal from the trauma and gain some sense of normalcy. Today and for the rest of my life, I can't erase the trauma that has happened to Demetrius, but I am grateful that the Gwinnett Police Department saw to it that Robert McDonald needed to be terminated immediately for his actions. This sentence certainly does not change the unforgettable day. However, this is my son's chance to know a small amount of satisfaction that justice will be served and that a strict sentence for the defendant has the potential to affect the thinking and actions of others. But what really matters is when Robert McDonald goes in, hopefully he comes out a better person. And Your Honor, I am hopeful that you will proceed with the recommended sentence for the crime committed by Robert McDonald and is equivalent to the suffering he inflicted without the slightest bit of mercy or regret sustained by Demetrius. And Your Honor, I ask that if I could address the defendant directly.
That's not part of victim impact, Judge. She can testify how it's affected her family, but she cannot address the defendant in victim impact.
Okay. Well, Your Honor, I want you to know that the defendant does not know me, but he has turned me and my family lives upside down, and that is why I'm here today. I would like him to take his punishment as penal servitude, take it as a second lease at life, because the cause that you create gets the reaction that you get. I would like for him to have his time to use physically, mentally, and spiritually to uplift himself. With that being said, and I cannot forgive him, and it is not because of hate, but I pray that he is provided with appropriate therapy and resources to rebuild his life as my son and I will. And I hope that he accepts his proper punishment and puts himself to re-enter society as a better person. And to conclude, I want to thank the Assistant District Attorney Charlotte Hendrick and Marlene Oldman, the Victim Services, and many others for their passion for justice, their skills, and their hard work and perseverance for trusting that the justice system could get things right despite the odds of excessive force by a police officer against civilians is just their word against others. I want to thank the jurors for their civic duty and great sacrifices in believing in my son that he did not deserve the pain that was inflicted upon him that day. And I want to thank all my friends, old and new, the ones who stood by us. You know who you are, and each and every one of you have made a huge difference. Please know that. Thank you.
Matt,
Yes, sir.
how many times your son been arrested?
I'm not sure.
How many times he had to serve any time?
I'm not sure of that either.
Judge, I'm gonna object to this line of questioning. I mean, how many times he's been arrested, or how many times he's been in jail, or how many times he's done anything is really irrelevant to the microcosm of time that we're discussing here.
That's so that it's not. She's testified about all the harm that's come to her and her son, and he's led apparently an exemplary life, and what is a fair sentence as to this man? I think we're entitled to show her bias and prejudice in this case.
Judge, she's his mother. Of course she's biased and prejudiced. That would be silly otherwise.
I'm reluctant,
I understand.
okay? She's entitled to make a victim impact statement. Now, the event has affected her and her life, and she has done that. There is, I think, sufficient evidence before the court concerning the issue that you are delving into that I have already reviewed. Okay, so I'm gonna sustain it at this time.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, you can step down. You can call your next,
I don't believe anybody else wishes to speak, Judge, so we would.
so that's it?
That's
Okay.
it.
All right, Mr. Britt?
Yes, sir, Judge. For the record, we would tender into evidence defendants exhibits 1 through 55, which have been supplied to the court and the state, those being the character letters that were submitted prior to the court had time to review them. We would tender into evidence, Judge, defendants exhibit number 56, which has been supplied to the state. I think it may have also been supplied to you by Judge Davis and staff, that being the certificate of authenticity, which delineates the amount of time that Mr. Hollins has spent on all his cases in Gwinnett County in custody. That being defendants exhibit 56 and their certificate of authenticity, and we would tender it pursuant to Judge OCGA section 24-8-8036, 24-8-8038, 24-8-80322, 24-9-9024, and 24-9-90211, which is what the certificate has been signed for.
Ms. Odie, any objection?
No, Judge, I don't.
Admitted.
We would tender into evidence the only conviction of Mr. Hollins that had not taken place at the time of trial has happened since that time, that being defendants exhibit number 57 and defendants exhibit number 58, which are certified copies of the state of Georgia versus Demetrius Brian Hollins in 20B00115-7 in Gwinnett Superior Court.
Admitted. You have objection?
Judge, the question I would have is how many of these particular instances that we're talking about that Mr. Britt has just put in evidence involve Robert McDonald? I mean, I think we're here today to talk about Robert McDonald's behavior, not necessarily behavior of Mr. Hollins. We know what the behavior of Mr. Hollins is, we saw it on video.
But I think we're here to judge what's the proper sentence based on what the state of Georgia, in the face of the district attorney's office and the solicitor general's office, has deemed to be appropriate punishment for Mr. Hollins on at least 10 occasions, Judge. And, excuse me,
I apologize.
and as to Mr. Bon Giovanni, in this case. And I think that the court has to take that all into account in this matter.
Judge, we're not here to sentence Mr. Hollins. We're not here to sentence him on anything.
Sentence Mr. McDonald, I'm well aware of that.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. You call witnesses, Mr. Britt?
Paige Hoover, she's right outside the door.
I got it.
Raise your right hand. You swear the evidence you should give in this matter now pending before the court, that being the state of Georgia versus Robert J. McDonald in indictment 19-B-03459-10 shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but truth, except God, or you so affirm.
I swear.
Lower your hand. State your name for the record.
Paige Hoover,
And Ms. Hoover, what county do you live in?
Fulton.
All right, and how long, have you ever lived in Gwinnett County?
I have.
And how long have you lived in Gwinnett County?
I grew up in Gwinnett County. I lived there for 23 years
And why did you come to move to Fulton County?
because I accepted a job with a Fortune 500 company.
All right,